Greetings, my brothers and sisters. Sending gratitude to all of you who are joining in today to accompany us down the rabbit hole of self-exploration through plant medicines. My name is Ryan Sprague, and I'm here to tell you that your frequency is now set and tuned to explore psychedelic medicines and the impact they've made among the countless psychonauts exploring the last true frontier. Buy a ticket and take the ride with me as we get true first-hand accounts of the experiences, benefits, risks, and transformations taking place within the ever-expanding world of psychedelic medicines on This One Time on Psychedelics. I imagine for anyone listening to this show right now, we can all agree that the world is going through some monumental shifts. Whether it be in healthcare, spirituality, finance, technology, or really any other facet of life, it is clear that we are living during a period that has the ability to increase massive awareness in each of us. This being said, there are many that are stuck in old programs of fear and who are unknowingly buying into the belief that things are quote-unquote worse than ever, when in reality, as you will hear this week's guest and I speak about today, it's not that things are worse than ever, it's that we, as a collective, are becoming more aware than we ever have in recent history. Today's guest is a returning guest and dear brother of mine who has been actively practicing medicine work and shamanistic practices for over 20 years in the jungles of Peru, and he is one of my all-time favorite human beings. Come take a ride with us as we dive into the current state of the world and why we choose to believe that the future is extremely bright in all ways, as I welcome my man Hamilton Souther back onto the show. Hamilton, my man, it is so amazing to be back here again with you, my brother. We were just catching up beforehand, and I'm so excited to have you back on. I'd love, because you've already been on before, many of the listeners already know your story and what you're doing with Blue Morpho, but there's been a lot of things that you've been adding in, right? So I'd love to get an update on just like what's been going on the last year since you've been on. I know you got the Academy, which I believe was rolling out last time we talked, but now you got the Mystery School within there, things like that. So lay it on us, man. Tell us everything that's new in Hamilton's world.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. It's a pleasure to be here. Blue Morpho is expanding, which is exciting. This is the best ever in the last 20 years. And I never would have expected that 20 years into this whole thing is when it would get like phenomenal. But that's where it is. So, Blue Morpho continued with its retreats, but we rolled out our Academy. And the Academy is giving everybody what they need in the psychedelic renaissance to be able to be safe, knowledgeable, understanding, have the skills that they need to be able to do this in the right way with the right people. In the middle of all of that, we got so many of the students were asking us, where is the school? Where's the program that really teaches the elite mysticism, that teaches what is the today's version of the ancient mystical and magical practices? And so to me, that just sounded like Hollywood in real life. We needed to bring it all together, going back from the Star Wars generations to the Harry Potters, to the X-Men, to the Avengers. We needed to bring all of that together under one roof. And we call it Mystery School. It's been rolling now for a couple months, and it's exciting. We get together with really 3 main activities a week. We have a sharing circle. We have a challenge inside the community that is about community building and keeping everyone together. And then we have alternating lectures and ceremonies that we do together where we go into altered states and explore the mysteries of this universe.
Dude, that is epic, man. It's like, I'll take nail in the head for 500 to everything that I love put into one place, And, I had mentioned to you before that I was part of a mystery school. I won't mention necessarily which one it was. And I discerned that it was no longer the droid I was looking for. And so it was really funny, man, because, to throw a Star Wars reference in, but it was really funny because I met this gentleman, Jason, at Arcadia, Aubrey's festival. And he came up to me and was like, hey, I heard you on Aubrey's show. It was really cool. And I just got this amazing vibe with him. And I was like, dude, just come hang out with us. Like, let's go. Right. So the whole time we were at Arcadia, we were just finding really cool people that were like, come hang with us. Right. So I'm talking to this guy, Jason. And I show him breath work at Arcadia. He had done it maybe once before, but we were in a altered state, let's just say. And this breath work, definitely it's so powerful when you do it on MDMA or psilocybin or whatever. So I show him it and he's like, dude. And so it shifts something big in him. Right. And he's like, dude, I've been doing breath work. Oh my God, it's so cool. And then you and I were catching up real quick. And you mentioned this mystery school. And I was like, oh, dude, I'd love to join that. And you were like, hey, man, I'd love for you to be a part of it. So I ended up getting in there. And then literally that day I'm talking to Jason. And I'm like, yeah, man, what's going on in your world? He's like, dude, I just joined Hamilton's mystery school. Have you heard about it? And I'm like, what the fuck? And I was like, yeah, dude, I just joined too. So it was one of those hilarious things, man, where I'm like, all right, that's God being like, you're getting warmer. You're getting warmer. So yeah, I'm really glad he started it, man.
Yeah, I'm stoked to have you guys in there. Yeah. This is a place where I think the biggest value, other than, what we do together is insane, right? It's incredible. But the biggest value is finally finding a place where we can bring everybody that's into this in one place so that we can actually have a community and a group of people that can share ideas and talk. So the last 20 years, it's been all dispersed. Like there's been a lot of us. There's millions of us in the world. Right. And sometimes we feel alone in our practices, wondering like, well, where's our tribe? Well, now we can utilize this technology platform as a way to be able to, have our tribe and come together and, have that communal experience, share ideas. And that's been the part that I think is just crazy value.
Yeah. Dude, like the tides are returning, as they say, right? Like the last couple of years, I think really was a big surrender experiment for a lot of people. And I think a lot of people realize that like what really matters in life is that, do you have a why that really matters to you? Are you following your heart? And do you have amazing people around you that charge your battery and act as this battery charging docking station so you can go light up the world together, right? And so like, this is the future, us coming together because yes, we're strong alone, but we're much stronger together because the whole idea of, let's say, a mastermind, and that term is now used for a very specific type of container, but like really anytime you're getting a lot of minds together, you create that mastermind and really a master heart as well. And so it's amazing to see you doing this. And I'm just really excited to get down to Peru, man. I've been talking to, I have a lot of friends that I know I've been planning this with you for like a year now. My calendar got so insane, but my friend Kristen, we were just talking about it at New Year's. We had a beautiful New Year's get together with like 15 of our really inner circle ride or dies and just an incredible event. And we were all talking about like, let's all go do it together, and I want my first time to be with you, man. Cause we talked about that, so I've saved myself for you.
Well, I appreciate that. We'll deliver, the most consistent thing over the last 20 years in my life has been the ayahuasca.
Yeah.
Can you imagine of all the things, like that's when we started was the most out there, biggest, but actually that's the most consistent of everything. Like it just never fails to deliver, which is the thing that I love most about it now.
Yeah, 100%, man. I've been so intrigued and I'm at an age now where I'm like, I'm not like rushing to go do it in the backwoods of Maine or whatever. No offense to that, but when you explained it like in this idea of like being ayahuasca really being a channel opener for the other plants in the jungle to be able to speak to you, it made perfect sense to wait because I'm like, well, I'm not against doing it somewhere else, but I think my first time I want to have it like really like original, like I really want to have it in the place that, this was really cultivated in. And I want to be able to do it with you and in your facility, right? And be able to have that experience, because I know in my heart that it feels right to do that, and I think for a lot of people listening too, that maybe they're feeling something similar, right? They're feeling like I'm being called to this, but maybe it's like, hey, I don't want to go do it on a off street in LA where I can smell Chick-fil-A cooking while I'm doing it, like, Theo Vaughn had a funny thing about that, how like he could smell the Waffle House when he was doing ayahuasca because it was like off the side of the highway in LA. I'm like, yeah, not the place to do it.
No. I think that, it's going to spread, right? Last year, ICERS, which is a group that kind of tracks ayahuasca around the world, legality, stats and stuff, put out there were over 4 million doses of ayahuasca served, which in my mind was, massive expansion, right? And you got to think like psilocybin's got to be in the hundreds of millions, so that's going to move to billions and ayahuasca will move to tens to hundreds of millions, et cetera. So this huge expansion is going to happen. But I think the Amazon will always be here as a Mecca. It's a place to pilgrimage to and experience, come to the roots and the essence, be amongst the cultures that figured all of this out, which I think is really a way to pay homage and respect.
Definitely.
And so I love seeing the expansion into the world of this incredible, both spiritual gateway, sacrament, and medicine. And then I also think, okay, the world needs it, but they also need to support where this came from. Yeah. And that's where people can come here and have that different experience. And I think also, as you said, the gateway to the other plants of the forest. So you do this in a pine forest, you're going to have a gateway into that space. If you come here, you're in the most biodiverse, rich place in the world where you get to interact with that forest and be enveloped by it. And that's something really special too.
Hey, everybody. I hope you're enjoying the show. I wanted to take a quick moment to let you all know that the doors are officially open for the Conscious Cannabis Collective. And as such, this is the last week you can sign up and receive all of the bonuses we're currently including. This is the last time I will be personally onboarding those of you who sign up with a complimentary one-on-one session, and you'll have the ability to get the Grow with Cannabis course for free during this limited time. For more info on how you can take advantage of this offer, head down to the show notes for this episode and secure your spot today, as we only have so many spots left and they are filling up quickly. Now back to the show. Yeah, 100%, man. And like, I think it was Matthias Di Stefano I was watching where he was talking about the chakras of the earth are transitioning from like where they've been in the Middle East to now South America. And I totally feel it, man. Like I have felt this pull almost my whole life to South America, and all of my friends that go to Colombia, Peru, anywhere down there, they're always saying like, I mean, it's just so abundant down there, like, especially being in the Western world, like, you're told a lot of things growing up about like, oh, everyone wants to be here, but down anywhere else is just kind of weird. Right. And, I knew that was bullshit, but knowing intellectually and then experiencing are two different things. And when I went to Mexico, it was like that total, pattern interrupt of just like, oh, wow, like people down here, yes, maybe they don't have the corporate jobs and, the houses and the Bugatti or whatever. Right. But you know what they have? They have true connection. They have true joy. They have true laughter. They have true family. Like, it just seems as though it's more mature, in a sense where like, yes, like running into the rat race or whatever, if you get enjoyment from that, cool, go do it. But I think we've been positioned in the Western world that we all need that. And if we don't have that, we are less than and all of these things. Whereas my experience is just in Mexico. I haven't been to South America officially yet, but my experiences in Mexico and then also with my friends speaking about Colombia, Peru, et cetera, it's just like, I mean, it really seems like that's where the good energy is moving to. I don't know how to describe it. It's a very qualitative feeling I feel about it, but yeah, it's really powerful. Have you noticed like over the time you've been down there, 20 plus years, have you noticed this shift, right? Have you felt it? I'm sure like you were talking about the academy's doing better than ever, right? So I'm sure you've seen more people wanting to come down, but I'd love to hear from you, like what you've seen over the last 20 years in terms of transition with regards to that area of the world.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of it has to do with where it's located in the world and just going into human history too. And so you look at human history and the expansion of population, like the population hasn't really expanded that big down here. And globalization, westernization is coming. It's certainly growing in that sense, but it isn't as played out like it is in other parts of the world. And so there's a lot more just raw nature here. And I think what a big shift is happening is that people are deciding to not be so scared of nature and start to realize like, hey, we're supposed to be living in balance and harmony with nature. And nature's what made us. And we're, coming back to that origin and understanding of really even what we are, not just who we are. And when we go and we find nature from that perspective, we find that it's more untapped down here. And the people have lived closer to it and with it. So they're not as abstracted in their mind. And it isn't just about machines, right? So yeah, you go back into the States, what I see there are a lot of like really austere boxes that people live in filled with machines. But I'm like, where's the warmth, right? It's like, well, yeah, well, here's like the fleece, right? But no, where's like the warmth, the soul warmth that we all share, right? And it's like people are stressed and they're struggling in different ways. And, down here, there's economic pressures and there's classism and there's a whole bunch of stuff that's difficult that can change over time as well. It's that connection to nature that still exists down here. And it's really everywhere. Like we're in a city here in the Amazon and 10 minutes outside of the city, you're in just full blown jungle nature again. So there's that balance. And I feel that. And I also feel like a lot of really conscious people are being drawn here because it really is still a frontier. Whereas like through Eurasia, Asia, the Middle East area, down into Africa, Europe has been so populated and conquered over and over and over and over again over the years, et cetera. Like those are such entrenched cultures for the groups that are creating culture, that are creating, this shift in energy and shift in consciousness. I think they're being called to areas that are fresher. And I think South America has that in strides.
Yeah, 100%, man. Like, what I've been noticing overall is this kind of outdated paradigm. And I'll say here in the West, because that's where I'm at, I've noticed it, but it could be many parts of the world. But this whole like idea that, again, I don't think was ever consciously stated, probably, maybe. I mean, there's so many people on the planet, I'm sure it's been stated, but it's kind of more of like the thing behind the scenes, which is that man is smarter than nature. nature is here for us just to utilize and use and abuse, basically, right? And that's the outdated paradigm. We've seen where that's gotten us. Technology is not a bad thing. Technology is great, but what's your foundation, right? Like if you are utilizing technology at the price of being able to be mindful, really understand who and what you truly are, then you're not going to have the foundation necessary to make sure you're making wise choices with the nature around you. Like, for instance, you want to cut down some trees and use that wood to build a beautiful place that you're going to bring people together. Awesome. That's an alignment, right? On the other hand, if you're here in America and you are someone who's cutting down trees and has a vested interest in wood to make paper, and you're blocking hemp and these other things that could potentially be used as a result of just like being greedy or any of these kind of things, then, you know, your soul's going to pay for that, because what is nature? It's us, right? Just like you said. So by hurting nature and falling out of alignment with nature, it's really just a macrocosm or a microcosm of us falling into or out of alignment with nature as a whole, you know, and so with ourselves, you know, and so, yeah, it's a very interesting time to be alive, because I think so many of us are becoming aware of this, and yet it's still happening. You know, a lot of people say, oh my God, it's worse than ever. I'm like, no, we're just more aware than ever. You know, like we're more okay with accepting and really noticing these things and trying to figure out, like, what do we do from here? You know, and I'm curious for you, like, how would you say ayahuasca and other medicines as well for you, like, have helped you connect back to nature, right? Because this is a question I get a lot, is like, I want to connect back to nature and I feel like psychedelics are a way, but I'd love if you could explain in your own experience, maybe what you've seen with students as well, of, you know, how these, you know, plant medicines have connected you back to nature, and maybe a little bit of like, you know, where did you always feel connected to nature? Did you feel disconnected when you originally arrived in the Amazon? Some of that too would be great.
Yeah, I mean, the connection with nature is innate, right? So you use these plant medicines and they just drop you right in. Like, if people want to know, how do I reconnect with nature? Come use the plant medicines, and you're getting directly plugged into source. The veil comes down in half an hour to an hour. And it's usually not like, oh, how am I going to get plugged in? It's like, oh my God, I'm plugged in. I'm totally plugged in. Right? Like, and then it's like, that's nature, right? Like, welcome. It's a huge energy field and it's incredible. So just come participate and you'll be plugged right in. Yeah. And for me, I mean, I was, you know, abstracted in my thinking. I was cut off in my ways. I always loved nature. I mean, I loved hiking. I loved being outdoors and stuff, but that doesn't mean that you're really in tune with it, right? That just means you're using it to go skiing or enjoy its beauty or whatever, but to really feel it, listen to it, and understand it. Like, I didn't have that until I got into the Amazon, and it required both the ceremonies and also observing people that already had that and lived in that kind of harmony. Like, when I first went into the forest with guys just foraging or hunting, they would listen to the forest. They would listen to everything. I didn't know how to listen to anything. I was tuning everything out, because you hear sirens and, you know, sound of the road and everything. So you're tuning everything out. You're not tuning it in. They were just started by, reversing that sense, tuning everything in. And then when I got into the ceremonies, I couldn't believe how much nature there was. And then it took me to that, you know, that kind of cliche we hear that, like, in the human senses, we tune out trillions of stimuli a second or something like that. Yeah. You know, and I think something like ayahuasca opens you to maybe like a fraction of that trillion stimuli more. And so as soon as it does that, your senses are on hyperdrive. It's just like, whoa, I didn't know there was all this to sense. And then I would say, like, an hour or two into the ceremony, this thing happens, which to me is like one of the greatest miracles of it, which is all the senses become one. So instead of like being distracted, like I'm seeing things and hearing things and feeling things and smelling things, and it's just whelming, all of a sudden it's just like, boom, you're centered, you're clear, and you're sensing. And all your senses are working together in harmony. It's just like you have one huge sense. Extraordinary senses are turned on. And nature's like through that. It's not like you're separate from it and observing it. It's like the energy waves coming from like the trillions of insects making, you know, this beautiful symphony are like going right through you. You see like quantum explosions of light all around. You can hear it. Like, that's just incredible, that connection in that way.
Wow. Yeah. It's so funny you mentioned that, because, you know, when you experience different states of awareness or different states of being, it can be challenging to put words to them. But I do know a state that I get to when I do high doses of mushrooms. And I've gotten there with LSD as well. It's a little bit weirder of a ride with LSD, but there's always this point where I'll make a mushroom tea, right? Like a 10-gram tea with Rachel and I. We'll drink it. and we'll put the lemon in there so it converts the psilocybin into psilocin, and it just slams you, right? And I enjoy that. I enjoy getting slammed. And so like the first 30 minutes is you just vibrating, a lot of Kundalini energy flying through you, right? Then you go through the experience, and about at like the 2.5 hour mark is usually when like the peak has been reached. You've, sobbed, you've done whatever you needed to do, right? You move some energy. And then as soon as it starts to like just, taper a little bit, then you open up into this like area where I can just lay on my back and stare at the ceiling and be more fulfilled, content, and joyous than I've ever been. But the second that I try to vocalize it, right, I come out of it. So it's like, it's so funny being me, right? Because what do I want to do? I want to go share this stuff. And like, it's so funny, this like little game I play with God, the universe, etc., where it's like, don't go do that thing. You're enjoying this. And I'm like, hey, Rachel, I'm feeling, and then it starts to go away. And I'm like, damn it, And so it's this really funny, like cosmic giggle that me and God have back and forth where he's like, you just can't help yourself, can you? I'm like, I really can't. I just want to go tell people about it. So it's funny you mentioned that, because I imagine that's a very similar feeling, or maybe the same one, who knows, to what you're describing there, because that's what it feels like. Like it feels like there are no thoughts whatsoever unless I choose to have them, but I'm completely content just being completely open, and just like really just like every once in a while, I'll take a deep breath in and I'll really just feel it hit every aspect of my body. And then I'll breathe it out. And there'll be little things that come in like, go do this. And I'm just, oh, that's nice. And it just flies away. And I'm just in this complete content state. And I've gotten there through meditation, but usually it'll take about 30 to 60 minutes of meditation to get me there. And it's just really powerful stuff. So yeah, I'm grateful we get to talk about these things, because I feel like a lot of people experience these states and they'll hear things like, Kundalini energy or Kundalini awakening. They'll hear like complete present or being in the present moment. They'll hear these things, but from a left brain point of view, intellectually, you may understand like, an idea of what that is. But like I always say, life is not an observation sport, right? You got to go live it. Or as Joe Dirt says, life's a garden, go dig it, right? So like, you got to actually experience it for yourself to be able to then actually understand what these states are. And that's been one of the most challenging things, is trying to figure out for me, like, okay, I'm vibrating like that. Okay, that might be Kundalini energy, right? Or like, boom, I had this like crazy, what I now know to be a Kundalini awakening in 2019, where I was just in like a bliss state for 3 weeks, no medicine whatsoever, just like crying at every song that came on. Pretty hilarious. And that shifted my entire life. That shifted my what I was doing for work, started the podcast, everything. So it's interesting to try to put names to these states, and not that they need a name, but that is the fun of being a human, is trying to label things that cannot be labeled. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it helps us understand them. I think the beauty of the plant medicines is that they're going to give you a wide variety of all of those experiences in a very short period of time. So instead of having to like believe in a practice, like a meditative practice for a long time to be able to get to those states, they're going to accelerate that development. I think when you recognize them and you can say like, okay, that's Kundalini, that's a real deep meditative state. And the meditative states, like you say, are ones where when you recognize you're in it, they're usually gone.
Yeah, exactly.
Krishnamurti once said that the moment you realize you're happy, you stop being happy. Now you're doing something else. It's that fast. But at least it gives you a roadmap, right? To be able to understand like, oh, this is what everyone's been talking about. I'm having those experiences too. And then you can add that into your other practices that can, be more like your daily driver or your daily way of connecting and staying connected.
Yeah.
But I love that. I mean, I love the idea that we can recognize those things, have those experiences ourselves. And one of the great things I loved about plant medicine was the democratization of those experiences. Because when I was growing up, that was put out there like a pinnacle. You might someday have an experience like that, but normal people don't really have that experience. And with plant medicines, it's like, hey, everyone gets to have these experiences, maybe not just in one ceremony, but over the course of 5, 10, 15 ceremonies, you're going to have these experiences. And it's an opportunity to feel connected and, be able to share them with others.
Yeah, 100%. And that's like what really clicked into me, because I've always been a psychedelic proponent. Well, since I was about 23 anyway, and I got into psychedelics. Cannabis before that, of course, opened the doorway. But for me, like, for instance, when I got into this mystery school that I was in, not yours, different one, I was really excited, right? They were teaching some cool stuff, Hermetics, Kabbalah, all these cool things that I was interested in. But very quickly, I started hearing some things like that were just extremely dogmatic, that as someone who's avoided religion like the plague throughout my life, because I'm just not into putting God in a box, that all of a sudden he needs money and he's all around you, but you got to come to this place. And, oh yeah, we need money too. It's like just very awkward. So, it was one of those things where, when they started sharing things about plant medicines, I never I never tried to, be a stickler in the group and raise my hand and be like, I don't believe that. Like, I'm just going to let you do what you want to do. I discern for myself. But it was interesting that maybe it was the hair. I'm not really sure. But I would have people come up to me very often in there and just be like, hey, do you use psychedelics? And I'm like, yeah. Like, why are you asking me? Right. Like, it's probably obvious. Right. But they're like, yeah, like, do you agree with what they say about these? And I'm like, as I started asking, I'm like, well, what are they saying? Because I hadn't heard a lot of these things outright. And they were like, well, they're saying that, cannabis is worse for your energetic body than cocaine, and that cannabis will steal your soul, and that why would you do a plant medicine? You're not a plant. And I'm like, wait a minute. They literally went there. They said, why would you use a plant medicine? You're not a plant. At the same time, they're preaching vegetarianism, right? And veganism. It's like, what the fuck is going on here, right? Like, I'm like, guys, if you're going to blatantly lie, be better than that, okay? Because that's really easy to uncover. And this has happened for a long time, right? This whole idea of, someone, whether it be a priest, etc., having to be the intermediary between you and God. You, as a peasant, you could never talk to God. But this person, they can be the person that can speak to God. And so you got to go to them. And once again, they need money and all these things, right? So what I started to realize was that, yes, are there dangers within psychedelic medicines in terms of, like you said, right? Not necessarily it being consciousness, but people meeting aspects of self that they haven't accepted or been aware of yet. Sure, that can happen, right? But that's not as a result of plant medicines. That's just someone going into something they don't know a lot about and maybe making a decision that, was out of alignment or not coming from true discernment, et cetera, right? But we don't blame the plants for that. At least I would hope so, right? Like, and that's what I started realizing was, oh, this school that I'm in, they're not saying, hey, be very careful. They're not part of our lineage like that. I understand. I understand that you don't practice it. Cool. Right. You can even say we don't recommend them. They're not part of our thing. Cool. But when you start fear mongering and things like that, that's when I start getting a really weird taste in my mouth, and it starts smelling like khakis and office supplies in there real quick, which is like my worst nightmare. It's like, it's the same feeling I get when I walk into a Staples, and I just smell reams of paper and I'm like, this is getting really awkward. So I had to eject my seat out of there. I was like, this is just getting weird. And it was interesting because so many people, like many times, would just be like, yeah, I don't believe it either. And one time I was actually in class and I was mentioning to another student, like they were talking about psychedelics. I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to hide anything. Like, I'm here to be an open book. Another student was like, oh my God, I knew you did psychedelics. And I'm like, oh, what gave it away? And she's like, oh, we just knew. So she was like, do you want a microdose? This is like in class. I'm like, yeah, fuck it. Right. So I took a microdose, which was an actual microdose. It wasn't like one of these microdoses you feel, but it was just really, really funny to me because it seemed as though here are the heads, right, saying don't use any of these plant medicines as they're drinking Coca-Cola and eating Tic Tacs. But it seemed like everyone in the class, or a lot of people, were just like, yeah, I'm going to go do it anyway. And I feel like, that's what's really changing is we're starting to realize that we as an individual, even without plant medicines, can speak to God, right? Now, the challenge is that most of us have been so led astray, like you were talking about, that the time it would take to get there is not simply you sitting in meditation. It's you then being able to believe you can get there, being able to, be around, find other people that believe in that as well, because your family might not, right? There's a lot of steps that go before being able to have that, versus you have a plant medicine experience in a conscious manner, and now that experience is possible. So now you're more dedicated to go meditate every day or do breath work every day because you know what you're actually working towards. It's not this esoteric qualitative concept you've heard of like Kundalini, like the fuck is that, right? So like, that's where I really feel one of the many areas, I mean, millions of areas that plant medicines have helped me in, right? They kind of give me like a sneak peek at like what reality can really be like. And now when I come back, I get to start asking myself sometimes the challenging questions, right? Like, why have I never been able to experience that before? Where can I experience that more? And what kind of people are looking to experience those types of things? So I 100% agree with you, man. It's interesting being in the world right now. But, I feel like the guy in Independence Day, the alien doctor down in Area 51, where like the president comes down and he's like, oh man, things are really brutal up there. How's things down here? And the scientist is like, what? This is awesome. This is the best time to be alive ever. We've had this spaceship for years. It's done nothing. Now all of a sudden all these buttons are lighting up, right? That's kind of how I feel, because I know that as I'm sure you do too, I know that this is all part of the plan, right? Like, the waking up, the becoming more aware, the seeing the challenges and the perceived evil and all this stuff, like it's all part of it. It's all part of being able to come into self-realization. The same way that if you want big muscles, you're going to have to be in the gym doing some brutal stuff and lifting heavy weights and all this stuff that looks really chaotic, but it's all for health, And so, yeah, it's interesting.
No, I think, like, to that analogy, think what time in history did we get born into? The one we're told is propaganda, right? The one we were told is just total BS. And so when I look at it, I'm like, hey, wait a second. We might have been born into a real dark age. Like, it's all modern and it's all, hey, this is where all the new knowledge is and stuff. Yeah, but only in one way. And to do that along the way, hey, by the way, it seems like for special interest, lobby, and a lot of other economic reasons, a lot of just really logical, rational things got taken out of the system. Like, for instance, like you said, utilizing plants that have, regenerative, renewable qualities for ones that don't, for economic reasons. Making all of these pejorative laws around our plant medicines that were our sacred medicines before there was ever the first pharmaceutical. So, like, okay, 1 million years of human history, humans utilizing plant medicines, 200 years of pharmaceutical history. Oh, the million don't matter. Let's just like completely make that illegal and just fearmonger all about that, right? Makes no sense whatsoever. And then people debate whether or not our ancestors used plant medicine. Like, guys, it was the only medicine around. Like, they had to use plant medicine, right? It wasn't like they even had a choice, And I see that around the same thing with dogma. And I think that the truth in religion has nothing to do with the institution of religion. The truth of religion is something in us. It has to do with soul, whether anyone else talks about it or not. It has to do with God, which I call the universe. Right. And so to me, it's like, I think it's like a completely provable concept here, guys. I don't think you can separate God from the universe, or you're playing games of separation again. So if you take God is the universe, and maybe a lot more, I mean, who knows? I don't know. But at least the whole universe that we know, that's enough proof for me that we got something like really special going on here that we need to pay attention to, right?
Yeah.
And when we use our plant medicines, we can tap into that. And we don't need anyone to tell us how or to tell us that it's right or wrong or good or bad. But there are safety considerations. Right. Now, what I love about plant medicines that have this like multi-thousand-year ancestral history is that our ancestors figured out the safety parameters associated with, right? Like, seatbelts have been around for like a few decades. This has been around for thousands of years, guys, like thousands and thousands. They're like, hey, look, these are the doses that are like reasonable, right? And you can go micro to hero, but they're still in the reasonable amounts, right? And it's like, this is the way we do this. And we've been passing this down generation after generation after generation. And so if you just use common sense and, you're willing to learn something about it, not just like go do whatever, but actually learn something about it, you realize like we have had this dialed in for thousands of years. Yeah. And we know what we're doing with it and we know how to work with it, and you learn how, and then you can reap incredible rewards from it. And what it helps you do is see that in that innate connection that you have with the divine, which I think is innate. Like I said, I don't think that's the special connection. What's special is the ability to immediately tap into it when you've been propagandized and brainwashed and fearmongered your whole life.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like just pulling the layers of delusion and BS off of you. That's what's special. And having some guidance on how to focus and use intention helps. And then you can tap into a real communion. And that's real. And now there are millions of people that have had this experience, right? We're not just two people talking about it. There are millions of people that are walking around going like, oh yeah, I completely tapped into source, or whatever word you want to give to it, right? Like, I've tapped in, I know what that experience is. And that's that shifting consciousness that's so special. And we have that, is available. And so I think like, hey, maybe we've been in a dark age, right? And we're starting to come out of it, but we learned a lot about technology and we learned a lot about, certain aspects of science during that time. And now it's time to bring that knowledge to like the greater whole of our mystic wisdom, and all the dogma just has to go. Like, for those that still want it, it's everywhere. So go have it. But for those who want freedom from it, that's what we're about, is to be free of the nature of that dogma, to be able to have an open mind, awaken our intelligence again, and tap into this universe that, has made us. And I just think that's just, so important.
Oh, 100%, man. I fully agree. And it's kind of funny in a way when you start waking up because you start realizing that everything is asked backwards, right? Like, I was mentioning before we hit record, this sovereignty stuff I've been getting into, financial literacy, et cetera. And my buddy Aaron Abkey is exquisite at being able, because he's a very deep spiritual teacher. He was raised deep in religion. His parents own one of the most famous churches in San Francisco. And so he really understands the Bible from many different perspectives, right? And how he speaks about it is actually a manual for commerce and freedom. Whereas what do we know the Bible to be today in most religious institutions? It's something that limits people, right? They use certain segments in a very left brain linear way to actually make you feel like a sinner or not good, et cetera. Not to mention the fact that the Bible's been translated through how many dead languages. There's books taken out of it. It's his story, right? Instead of history, it's like, so who really knows what's meant to be in there or what was originally in there? But at the end of the day, you were mentioning like this idea of being able to, like, it's not the plants that are giving you source, God, whatever you want to call that. They're just literally taking the brush away so that you can, or taking the clouds away so that the sun that's always been there can just do its thing and shine, And I think that the more that we're able to wield that, that power, that awareness, everything is already inside of us. But very similar to if a computer gets a virus, you don't try to get rid of the virus from the normal operating system. What do? You turn the computer off and you start it in safe mode, right? Which is like the safe mode is a very similar thing for me than like, that malleable state you get into when you connect with psychedelics. Now, again, like you articulated, if you don't know what to do to remove that virus, it doesn't matter if you start in the safe mode, right? Maybe your computer will run a little faster, like maybe you'll be able to find the virus, but it's going to be a lot of trial and error. Versus if you actually learn how to remove that virus, well, then you're going to have a much more efficient time because you're going to go into safe mode. You're going to know exactly what to do. You're going to remove the virus and get back to your normal operating system. And so like why I really love plant medicines, I mean, one of the many reasons is because they have helped me and been instrumental in being able to like, I don't know what I don't know, right? None of us know what we don't know. And so for me, especially in the early years of doing psychedelics, I was just fucking around and finding out, right? Like what's in there? What's going to come forth when I get out of my typical ego and default mode network and I open up the subconscious? And so for me, like, what I found is exactly what you said. Like in there was a lot of things that did serve me, right? A lot of empowering stories, a lot of empowering beliefs, but there were just as many limiting beliefs and unconsciously limiting stories as well that were putting a governor in a way on my ability to see myself as a divine being and being able to then take that and spread it to the world and help other people see that, just like you do. And so, plants have been instrumental in that. And I find it really funny when people are still trying to say, no. It's this total, you have to be really extremely careful on all these things. And yes, right. Like you said, there are safety protocols, but like, have you ever seen any pharmaceutical ad? It's like, hey, are you having diarrhea? Take this pill, but beware, you might have a heart attack, you might have a stroke, you might have your ass fall out of your body. Like there's just like, and the funniest part of it, man, is they're doing it in this like really funny voice where they're like showing a family hugging each other. And like, it's just so awkward to watch. I'm like, man, this is going to be like 100 years. I hope anyway, or some amount of time, that's going to be like comedy. They're going to be like, hey, do you want to watch commercials from 100 years ago and just see how silly everyone was? It's really funny, man.
I think we're on that trajectory, though. Like what things are today, you think about it, 100 years ago, that's already for us deep history. Yeah. Like that's not just like off the cusp anymore. You go like back 1,000 years, think about like what it is today and 100 years into the future and then 1,000 years into the future. Like there's going to be billions of years of future, like billions and billions. I want to know if we're going to be relevant in that. And really the way we've been treating each other is pretty low, like on the overall consciousness scale, right? Like trying to basically shill all the time, everything to everybody about everything, kind of at some point, I think gets outgrown. One of the things I see coming in that direction is like this union, like we're talking about, we have an innate union with source and, God's just everywhere. And there's like the sun shining. On that note, I've talked now to 1,000 people plus that have had this direct experience of source. And they all say the same thing, that when it happens, it's like source was always there through their whole past as well, everywhere, can't get away from it anymore. And even inside them. So it's like the inside has it, the around them has it, and the deep past has it too. They all have that same, same notion of that experience with it. And so I think as we're talking about going into the future with this, I think there's this convergence of what we're creating in terms of technology and consciousness and source that finally like becomes the next foundation that elevates us beyond all of that.
Yeah.
Right. And we're just in that period now where the waking up is starting, but that's accelerating at an exponential rate. Just in the last 3 to 5 years, I've seen it. It's like exponential rate of awakening, exponential rate in the psychedelic renaissance of the tools that we use for awakening that have been our ancestral tools for the entirety of the living existence of our species, right? Yeah. This isn't like something new. It's that we've had this prohibition. And so now all of a sudden we're trying to transcend that prohibition and tap into what we've always had. And I think when you bring all of that together, the innovation that comes out of that ultimately helps us get past that thing. And like you say, the commercials of today will be the comedy of the past.
Well, it's so true, and I really like to think about like a very optimistic point of view. A lot of people are like, oh, AI is going to fuck everything up, or like this pessimistic thinking. And I'm like, well, potentially that's within the realm of infinite potential that is within the universe. But do we really want to create a reality for ourselves where we think that's actually going to happen? It's like, for me personally, no. I see a world where, so long as we are aware of like, who and what we truly are, what really matters, et cetera, I see a world where AI, technology, et cetera, can really facilitate that. I mean, look at what we're able to do right now. Like, this is awesome, right? So like, for me, I don't like to throw the baby out with the bathwater and be objective, because there is no objective reality. There's no reality where technology is all bad or all good, right? It's simply tools, just like plants are, just like everything. And the thing that human beings are overall, now again, there's been a big amount of awakening, but still struggling with is this idea that like, dude, it's you and you alone that creates your reality, right? No one does this to you. You might have been programmed when you grew up, and so it might not be your fault that you're coming into awareness of all of these distortions in you, but it is 100% your responsibility to take ownership. And it's your opportunity, right? Like, it's fucking awesome. That's what I always want people to know is like, I never want to seem like more rules, like, oh, you got to take accountability, like David Goggins, it's going to be tough and hard and you got to punish yourself. No, man, it's awesome. Imagine if you were able to tap into something that reminded you constantly of the big picture, right? Like, that's awesome. Like, why wouldn't you want that? Why wouldn't you want more joy, more love, more compassion, more humility, more service to others, more service to self? Why wouldn't you want these things? And like you were talking about with technology, it's almost like a collective hero's journey, right? We started with nature and God, because they're the same thing. And then we left home and we walked out and we did all these cool things and created all these things. And like you said, in the Western world, what happened? Most of us are ridiculously stressed. Cancer rates and all these things are, on the rise and all of these things. But for me personally, I don't even necessarily think that cancer is objectively caused by chemicals or anything. I think it's literally just how far away we are from nature. Now, chemicals are a sign of that. All of these things that happen are signs of that. But I think that the reason that some people can smoke and drink and live to be 110, for instance, right? We can see it's not objective in nature that these things cause cancer, is because those people somehow have tapped into either God, source, whatever you want to call it, and or they have true connection in their life, right? So they might not have much by Western standards, but they actually have everything. Because when you tap into everything, how can you not have everything, right? And so it's like, it's really a catch-22, and so like, we've gone off on this hero's journey that's been amazing, right? And again, I'm very optimistic about it. I think it was necessary. And if you look into the story of like Atlantis, right, the myth of Atlantis, it's very similar. It's almost like we're having a comeback, not a go back. Before we utilized technology, we fucked around, we found out, and we almost blew up the planet, right? So this is like our returning, right? We're like, are we going to do the same thing again? Is history going to repeat itself, or are we going to learn? And I think plants are going to be instrumental in that, because like you said, it's like for most people right now, they have a very short attention span. And they just don't know what they don't know. They're so boxed in that they just don't know. And so if you go tell one of them like, yeah, take about 3 months off of work and go to this mountaintop and meditate up there. They're like, well, what's meditation? Like, you're just going to sit with your eyes closed and, see if something happens, right? They're going to be like, yeah, I'm just going to go turn on Netflix. That sounds boring as hell, right? But if you end up giving them an experience where all of a sudden they are able to have an experience as if they've been a monk meditating for 30 years, all of a sudden they go, oh, I only want more of that. I only want more of that. So now they're going to come back, and with the right integration and support, they're going to be able to construct their life to fit that versus constructing their life to fit what the mainstream is saying they should want, right? And so it's a big part of, individuating within being one as well. It's got both. And so it's really, really cool stuff, man.
I mean, that's packed in a ton there. What do we do as part of the awakening? I think that's exactly what's happening, though. I think human is getting an opportunity, and it's not a punishment. It's an opportunity to outgrow the pieces that aren't working. And it's an opportunity to see what we need to do and have the tools to do something about it. Yeah. Right. I think this is the time in history where finally there are enough tools. And so, yeah, can AI do something that, is bad? Sure. If predatory humans use predatory technology to predate on humans, lo and behold, something pretty bad happens. But I don't think that's any different than any of the other predatory technologies that humans have been using the whole time to do the same thing. But I think what's unique about this time is that there are so many technologies that can be used for other purposes. And no one's stopping you from using them for other purposes, right? No one stopped me from going into the Amazon. Some people thought it was pretty wild what I was doing. Some people weren't okay with it, but they didn't stop me. They didn't say, hey, you can't do that. Someone doesn't stop you from using a Zoom to talk to other people about new ideas. Somebody doesn't stop you from sharing in these kinds of altered states of consciousness. It's happening now in the modern history in the last 100 years more than ever. Right. So it's like there's actually a lot of permission out there, and we have to decide within ourselves, what do we want to do? We have to take that sacred choice and decide, well, is this cooler than Netflix? Is this something that I actually want to do? And, I think multidimensional source telling me a story that's 10 times more interesting than Netflix is actually really interesting. And at least deserves the same amount of time as Netflix, right? I could split those into two, and you can have both, right? And I think that's one of the beautiful things about this day and age is that people are waking up to this grand variety of what's out there. It's not just what you're told. And the ideas about all of this are being shared all the time now. And so that gives us that opportunity to make those choices. And again, no one's stopping you. Yeah. So you just find it within yourself what you're really about. What do you really tap into? What makes you really tick? What's that thing inside you that you want to know more about? And for everybody who wants to understand consciousness or an altered state or understand any of these spiritual ideas that have been used, or just want to be part of a solution instead of part of a problem, or help the world be a better place, if you have any notion of service within you whatsoever, these are just massive accelerants. And the importance to know that there are people out there that are sharing this now widespread, and it's everywhere to get involved with.
Yeah, 100%. And I love what you said about, Netflix even, right? Because it's a yes and, right? It doesn't mean we have to oh my God, I'm a spiritual person now and I can never watch Netflix again. It's no, you're just going to be more consciously aware of what you choose to program yourself with when you choose to watch something like Netflix. I'll be honest, right? Rach and I, pretty much all we'll watch are rom-coms. Why? Because they're going to program you with things that are actually positive. I don't necessarily I actually never at this point go out to watch horror movies. If something seems dark right away, I'm nope, no, thank you. Because I also know that I'm someone who likes to play with my subconscious a lot. So do I really want to be drinking ayahuasca and seeing horrible things that I've programmed myself with come forth, right? I've gone through that before, So for me, it was same with music, right? Music can be one of those things that is considered bad, right? If you're hearing a lot of, really harsh language and things like that. But it can also be fucking amazing, right? So it's as the creator of your own reality, right? Don't hear from other people, this is bad, do that, whatever. As an individual, what do you choose? And are you choosing from a place of pureness, right? Pure source energy, or are you choosing from a program, that's led you to believe that's what you want? And again, you just don't know until you know. And even when you know, you don't really know. And that's why I love that quote, wise is the man who knows he does not know. Because I feel one of the biggest thirst traps in society, right? We've heard thirst traps are attractive people or whatever these things, and sure, that can be. But I think one of the biggest thirst traps is this idea that we're ever actually going to know anything. Because when you look into quantum physics, it's one of the first rules of quantum physics. There is no objective reality. Everything is subjective. And what's another way of saying that? There is no objective reality. You create your own reality, right? And so when you really tune into that, you just get to make choices that align with who and what you are and what you want in life. And that's as simple as it is, right? It doesn't mean you can't go have fun. Doesn't mean you can't pull late nights if that's exciting to you. It just means that you want balance with that, right? Because again, there's nothing that's inherently good or bad, but thinking makes it so, right? That's another great quote that I love. And it just really articulates the idea that the more we go around saying, oh, I can't do that because that person said it was bad, the more we're just giving our power away. And the less likely we're going to be able to see ourselves as the divine beings that we truly are, as source consciousness expressing itself through infinite different probabilities. And one of my buddies, Jason Picard, who I'd love to connect you with. Do you know Jason yet? Oh, Jason and you would have a great conversation, man. But, he said something really profound. I went to his house recently. He's a very deep friend of Paul Chek and has been training with him for like 13 years and has a whole story of being on Wall Street and, realizing he was 330 pounds and losing all the weight and just going through this very spiritual journey over the last like 15 years. But he said something that was really profound when we were in the sauna. And he said, God may be all knowing, but it's not all experienced, right? Because if it were, we wouldn't be here. And so if we can really think about that, it's like, okay, cool. Even the people in society that are bad or evil, right? Like they're not really, they're just playing a role, because how can there be a hero if there's no perceived villain, right? Like how fun would Star Wars be if Luke just like walked up to Yoda and was like, yeah, I want to be a Jedi. And Yoda was like, why? He's like, I don't know, I just want to be one. And like Yoda just gives him a sword and he's like sick and he just cruises off in his Star Cruiser and there's no battle, right? Like it wouldn't be a story, right? So if we can start to view everything as not good or bad, but just it is, right? And everything's playing a role. Aaron says often that the only quote unquote bad choice you can make is to not make a choice, right? Do you want to be positively polarized, right? Service to others, or do you want to be negatively polarized, service to self? Neither of those are bad. They just are. But you don't want to be stuck in the middle in the sea of indifference, right? Like you don't want to be stuck there, because then you never really choose, And so like people like Genghis Khan or whatnot, people that have been negatively polarized, yeah, they've done some really horrendous things, right? And obviously like we don't want those things to happen. But at the same time, they've allowed a lot of other people to put a stop to it and choose good, right? And so like that, in my mind, is positive. And as long as we can keep becoming more and more aware and seeing the things that we now realize are out of alignment, I mean, look what's happening with the whole pedophilia stuff going on right now in Hollywood and all these things that are now just, they've been there, but now people are aware of it. And that's, again, why I think people are saying it's worse than ever. It's like, no, we're just more aware than ever. So it's very interesting.
Yeah, the understanding of society, is a continuous evolution of all aspects of it. So the first thing I like to think of is like, dude, you think any of this is new? Yeah. Like humans haven't been doing a lot of new stuff for hundreds of thousands of years. I think our ancestors started doing all this stuff and they've perpetuated it. The question I always ask myself is like, why are we perpetuating the nature of these behaviors? Like what's in the intergenerational reprogramming of us is, perpetuating the nature of whatever the kind of abuses there are, right? Like there's more human trafficking than ever. I saw a movie about that recently. It just turned my stomach. I couldn't believe it. Like the nature of that. Like there's more slavery than ever, than even when there were, legalized slavery. There's actual real slaves, like not just like slave labor slaves, but actual like owned people. I can't even believe it. When I heard that, it was earth shattering.
Yeah.
There's more of this stuff out in the world than ever. And we're just becoming more and more aware of it. And I think because of the way media treats it, we're getting numbed to it.
Yeah.
And I think that's really dangerous to have people get numbed to like the real nasty, dark stuff of this life, instead of saying like, hey, we really need to figure out a way to do something about that. Mm. We do have a collective mass of 3-4 billion people connected online. Mm. We can stop this stuff like really easily together, right? We don't need to like put the responsibility on somebody else. We need to get together and just say, we're not cool with that anymore. Like, hey, we all realize this is really happening. That's really not okay for us as a democratic society on a global level. Yeah. We don't want our kids to get kidnapped and sold into sex slavery. Like, that's not okay. Just stop. Yeah. Hard stop.
Yeah, hard stop. Yeah.
We need hard stop. Like, and all the parents out there that suffered at this, like, we're so sorry. Oh my God, we need to help you guys do something collectively about this. Like, there are some really gnarly things about our earth. And I think it's really important that people awaken to that and decide what they want to put in their heads, because the media that you're talking about and those kind of movies and stuff like that desensitize everybody to the harshness. They make it Hollywood for it to be that way, right? And it's not. Those are stories that are like extraordinarily grotesque about things that are very real and going on, that I think it's time for us as a population to outgrow. Yeah. I think it's time for us to say, hey, that's what our ancestors did. And we're the generations now that are starting to think about how we transcend beyond this and actually make something better for all of us in this world. And that's for us to do. And it's not some utopian BS, but really a decision within ourselves about the kind of cultures that we want to create and be a part of.
Yeah.
and we can't just let one small subset of the population control the nature of our culture. And that's one thing I'm really excited about with AI. I just saw recently some posts that were done on one of the social media platforms about how the basically cinematic quality of AI video or AI movie is now getting good enough to be able to be on par. And when that happens, I mean, if they still say like the full feature length films are like 6 to 10 months away, but only 6 to 10 months, even make it 2 to 3 years for there to be democratization over the creation of that kind of content, people are going to be able to put in the stories they want to see. Like just a storyline, like, hey, I want to watch a positive story about things that are really funny, that'll make me laugh the whole time while I sit here with my girlfriend. And it's just a killer time and it's the best night of my life. And, it's okay if there's a little drama. And then you'll just go click. And then within seconds, you'll be watching that instead of like, all these people that decided for you what that entertainment was going to be. And I think that's an opportunity for us to rewrite what this collective narrative is on our mythology and come to agreement about what's better and what's more positive and what we want to put into our heads. And then ultimately how to bring that back into the world, not leave the world with that, but actually come back into the world and address some of these greater concerns. Like we talked about, like, human trafficking and slavery and things like that. I mean, I think these things we have to be willing to voice and talk about and then ultimately collectively do something about it.
Yeah, 100%. Like we are the majority, right? Like, we have so many more people than the perceived leaders do, right? And things like that. And all we have to do is just say no, right? Like hit them where it hurts. Like they're all obsessed with money, right? Which really isn't even real money. It's all debt notes, but that's another whole conversation for a different day. But, it's like, people are obsessed with this money, right? And so you just start saying no. Like I saw this during the pandemic, right? They were like, I saw a comedy skit recently of this guy, and he was saying like, he's like, yeah, I've never been anti-vax. Like, when I was a kid, they said, hey, measles. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna get that one. They were like, oh, chickenpox. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna get that one, right? He's like, when the COVID one comes out, he's like, yeah, I'm gonna get that one, right? Then he said, he's like, then I see Joe Biden saying like, hey, you need to come get it right now. And he's like, yeah, man, I'm going to go to my doctor and get it. He's like, no, man, just come down to Dodger Stadium and we'll get free hot dogs and donuts. And he's like, something weird here, right? So like, when you start really diving into this stuff, right, and you start learning all of this different stuff, you start becoming aware of the fact that, these people have vested interests, right? And so when a lot of us said, no, thank you, we don't want that, right? They were like, well, we'll take away your ability to go to restaurants. And what did a lot of us do? We're like, oh, wow. Why would we go pay to get poisoned anyway? Like, yeah, we'll just start cooking at home. Well, you're not going to be able to go to concerts. That's all right. I'll just have a DJ friend come over here and we'll have a great party and I can hit volcano bags while I do it. That's even better, right? And they're like, well, we'll take away your ability to go to movie theaters. I'm like, I haven't gone to a movie theater in years. Who still goes to those, right? So it was like one of those things where it's like, once you start realizing that all you really need is true connection and that connection to source, take it all away. Take all this stuff away. Who cares, right? At the end of the day, we must be willing to stand for something or we'll die for nothing, And I think at the end of the day, I was watching about a year and a half ago or a year ago, whenever the last season of Stranger Things came out, I had liked that show because I like the 80s and whatnot. And, they do a lot of cool music in there and stuff. And then this season, it opened up with them showing a bunch of dead children. And I was like, no fucking thanks. And I turned that right off. And I was like, I'm not allowing that to be normalized in my environment because that is extremely not good. Right. And, you see this, right? Like, there's a big theory out there that the powers that be that are doing these things, they avoid karma by showing us exactly what they're doing through entertainment. Right. And so like if they share with us what they're going to do, they're not going to face any karma for it. Now, I don't know if this is true. I have no idea. Right. But based on that and this theory, right, if we look at the fact that, right now in society, what we're seeing is all of this entertainment, like really talking about these grotesque things and showing these grotesque things, then it just starts to really make you wonder, like, what's really going on here? And I don't know what the answer is, Hamilton. I have no idea. But I know for me, what the answer starts with is just not programming myself with that kind of stuff, right? And then having these kind of conversations where we start really getting curious about like, yeah, how can we utilize technology and all of these things to be able to come together as a species, right? And just say, enough is enough and stop these things once and for all. Like, I don't know what the answer is, but I know it's not dissociating and disconnecting constantly, and I think that the answer for this, however we get there, is true connection. I have no idea the pathway there. There's probably infinite pathways there, but being able to have that awareness and being able to speak about it, I think is definitely the first essential step for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I think true connection is where it really starts.
Yeah.
And, for 20 years, I was looking for this solution to this greater dissonance and conflict in our consciousness, which to me underpins all of this, right? Like it underpins where the origin of the problem's coming from. Like if it weren't coming from our own species, it wouldn't be happening here, right? It's like we got to point the fingers at the collective us, right? Like it's like some of us, have good hearts and want to be doing things that are more positive, and other people not so much. Like they're kind of have changed, but we're all still part of that same species. And when I was looking at that, I finally came to an understanding that I called sanctuary. And sanctuary was a declaration of saying enough is enough. I want to have true connection with God and not have anything in between me and it. I want to be in my own communion and in my communication with other people that feel the same way and have connection with them, knowing that we share that, and that because we share that, we're more united than we would be otherwise. Yeah. And like, I know that you can communicate and receive directly from the divine. I know I can. I know everyone else who's there can. And so I created Sanctuary around it, and have just been now working on the book of Sanctuary to really bring out the philosophy around that idea, but really around the core of we have this unique ability to be connected with God. We have a unique ability to communicate. We need to develop it. It's a great way to spend our time. And then we can use it for all the positive intentions that we have, including how to be able to rewrite a lot of these narratives. And what I found is that more time we spend in the presence of source, the faster we can move out of the states of consciousness that were fear-mongered, propagandized, and habituated, and really just taught to us. Because, I don't really think I had like all these mythologies and narratives in my head when I was born. I think I was just kind of like, feet up in the air, crying or happy or whatever, like just kind of experiencing the light in the way that it happens, and then over the years, it's just like more and more and more and more. And in the last month, I've really just been, saying to my friends and stuff like, just over it, guys, I'm over it. Like the story doesn't change. It's the same cycle and the same narrative and the same circle over and over and over again. We got to finally do something truly new, but it has to actually be positive, or it is the same cycle. And then that's where, I started to say, okay, let's share Sanctuary with everybody. And I've been sharing it this last year at Blue Morpho. I've been inviting everyone to Sanctuary ayahuasca ceremonies. And it's just a space where we understand that we're communing directly with God and spirit and source, and learning through that experience, and then being able to expand on that. And so, that's my current solution for that. And I know that through that connection, like you say, we do make a difference, because as soon as we start to do that collectively, then our creativity changes. The thoughts that we have, the choices that we make start to reflect that. And then it helps us awaken and see more often more of what's going on around us. And when we have our true connection of a real community around us to share in that, the hard stuff that we have to look at is supported. Whether it's the hard stuff in our own shadow, or the hard stuff in our own lives, or the mistakes we've made, or the stuff that we see going on in the world that we don't like. It allows us to have a community of people together that say, hey, I commiserate with you. I understand as well, but there's something we can do about it. And what we can start with is changing the way we treat each other, changing the way we interact within our inner circles, and take that and start to now apply that to our families, and apply that to our work, and apply that to how we reach out into the rest of the world. And that's been something I've been doing this last year with people, and found it to be a tremendous benefit.
Dude, I definitely want into that. That is exactly where I parked my car. And, it's interesting, man, because I talk about this often, how if we were in a Star Wars movie right now, we'd be in The Force Awakens, because we're starting to realize that we've always had all the power. It's not like we had to get this power. We've always had it. But the powers that be, I don't even like calling them that, but for lack of a better term, powers that be, the perceived villains in this hero's journey, they've been toying with us and allowing us to believe, right? Which the power of belief is everything. Whatever you believe, you become. So all they've had to do is convince us that we're less powerful than we are. And then we will continue to believe into that and create a reality in which we are less powerful. But I think the more and more people that wake up to this, the more and more we're going to be able to shift the consciousness of the planet. And like Aaron talks about, right? We're moving from a third density planet into a fourth density planet at this time. And that's a lot of what happens, right? Like, think about it. Can you really apologize to a partner that you had a fight with if you're not in a heart open state? If you're stuck in the third chakra, it's all about I, right? Which isn't bad. It's just that when you move in a fourth density, you start to see it from a more broad point of view. And you start to realize, like, I can see myself in that person. I can now see like where my hands were potentially dirty or where I could have done better or communicated better, et cetera. And that comes from that fourth density point of view. And, to be clear, it's not being a pushover in fourth density. It's also exactly like you said, saying enough is enough. We're putting a stop to this from love, right? From a place of love and pure awareness, right? Like we're putting a stop to this because we're now starting something new, right? We're turning the page and we're starting this new endeavor. And so, yeah, man, I feel really hopeful for what the future has in store. And I'm just really excited to be able to do it alongside you, man. It's fucking cool. Like I say it all the time. It's literally like the Power Rangers. Like if you think about it like that way, or, you think about Harry Potter, like any of these like great heroes' journeys, like it's really like that, like that's what it feels like to me. It feels like, when you go to the gym and you've been going long enough now that like, this is going to challenge me, but I'm going to thug it out and get done with it, and I'm going to enjoy the process, and when you can like come at it from that point of view, I found that life gets much more enjoyable because now it's not like, oh my God, woe is me. We have to stop all this horrible shit going on. It's just like, no, we get to start giving people a taste of our medicine, because the remedy for this is not, oh, we're going to do the same thing to them that they did to us. No, that's the thirst trap of getting stuck back in third density consciousness, right? Of like an eye for an eye. This is the opportunity to come with love and show the world a totally different type of medicine that is the most attractive medicine to every human, whether they notice it or not, right? Whether they're consciously aware of it or not. When you experience true love, like for anyone listening, right? Like when have you felt more at home within yourself than when you're on a first date with someone that you're really connecting with and you can see a potential there? You're feeling that love, right? For a lot of people, that's where they can like feel it or kind of like resonate the most. It's like in those moments, there is no phone. Like you don't have to think consciously about, oh, how much time am I spending on my phone? Like that's one of the things I noticed too, is like a lot of these perceived problems, quote unquote, right? Technology is so addicting, these kind of things. It's the same thing as saying, oh my God, I'm addicted to cannabis. It's like, no, you're not. You're addicted to escaping discomfort, and cannabis is your coping strategy, right? So it's like, no, technology is not addicting. It's simply that you're so fucking bored and lacking meaning that the only thing you can do is hit dopamine hits from your phone. It's funny how whenever I go to a retreat, I'll have like about 3 hours of screen time each day, before I go to a retreat. And I remember the first time I went to one, there was this conscious thought of like, like, oh my goodness, my phone, like, what am I going to do about that? How am I going to make sure I get back to messages and whatnot? And then literally 4 days went by and I didn't even think about my phone. And I was like, oh, this is very interesting. All of a sudden, something I felt like and had clear evidence for in my life, I could make an argument for, that I was addicted to, all of a sudden literally didn't enter my mind for 4 days. Why? Because I was having real medicine, which is true connection, laughter, joy, community. Like, I really think that we're looking in the wrong areas for where the problems are. Like, no, the coping strategies are what we're looking at, right? But that's not the problem. That's just the coping strategy, And so as we start to get more clear on like what these things really are, and we speak about them more, and we allow people to experience them as well, right? Because we don't want to just necessarily tell people about them, right? Like that's why you have Blue Morpho, that's why you have the CCC. Like, come experience this. Don't take us at face value, right? Don't just believe us because you may trust us or whatever. That's more of how you got yourself into this boat, right? You can resonate, but always go, okay, like be skeptical and learn to listen. The fifth agreement, right? From Don Miguel Ruiz. It's like, okay, I'm curious. This resonates. Let me go try it for myself and see what they're really talking about, because you're going to teach best from experience, right? The analogy I always give here is, if you really want to understand what an apple is, no amount of reading about an apple, understanding the individual components of it, will actually give you the experience of what an apple is, more than actually going to eat the apple, right? Like when you eat the apple, you've had the experience. Now you can start going to learn about, what does that experience contain, right? What are the individual components of it? And so I think with this, it's like, guys, don't take our word for it. Come experience it for yourself, right? Come experience something that we're speaking about and discern for yourself, right? Because discernment is the ultimate muscle for this day and age, right? Really being able to tune in and discern, like, who is this person that's sharing these things with me? What results are they getting in their life? And are those results I want? And if so, okay, cool. I will start to listen to them, but I will not take them at face value. I'm still going to go experience it and make sure it's accurate for me. And I think the more we educate people to get into that, the brighter future we're going to have, And so I always say that, the future is very bright if you choose to believe it is, and that's where I think they say, like, heaven is a place on earth if you choose for it to be, it's your choice, and with great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah, we got to make our own heaven on earth.
Yeah.
And I think that you're absolutely right. Having the experience is what it's all about.
Yeah.
You have to have the experience. And that's what I love about plant medicine, is because it allows you the opportunity to have that experience. It moves us from theoretical to experiential.
Yeah.
The beauty of sanctuary is a way to have it with safety. Yeah. And I think that as we move in from what you're describing as third density to fourth density, which is also heart-centered awareness, is the idea that we can create something new. The big revelation for me, after like years of trying to figure this out, like the big revelation was like, oh my God, we have all the resources we need now to actually do something completely different. It's not illegal to do something different. It's only illegal to do something different if that thing breaks laws. And then it's not even different because they made laws about things that already happened. Yeah. Right. So if it's actually something new, it's not breaking the law at all to do something completely new and different. And we have all these resources to be able to do it. Right. And then it hit me like, oh my God, it's not us versus them. It's not, I have to fight them. I can just start I can start creating something that's very meaningful to me. And if it's about that nature of sovereign connection, if it's about that direct experience of God, if it's about this idea of getting together and sharing it in community, there's nothing stopping that, right? There's just nothing. It's only about people opting in and deciding for themselves to be able to do that. And that was the big revelation of how we get out of this us versus them and polarization and all that, was just start something new, start creating something new. And then I wasn't even in that thing anymore. And that's when I started to create Sanctuary. I felt that I was like, oh my God, this paradigm I've just been released from, that's been, nagging at me for my whole life. Like something's wrong, something's wrong, something's wrong, something's wrong. Yeah, because part of that paradigm, there's always something wrong. Like it's what it feeds on. It just feeds on this like idea that we're constantly creating something wrong. And I'm like, wait, I don't have to do that anymore. I can just start doing something that actually feels really good, that makes you feel really connected, share that with others. And there's nothing stopping it. And so I think that, having that ability to have that personal experience is what makes it real. And it's the way that we can share it. And that experience is available. If you want it, it's available. Yeah. And I love the idea of these intermixing disciplines that we now have, like cannabis and breathing, or what we're doing in the mystery school with Sanctuary, and then all the different kinds of visionary experiences, also including breath work. Right? Finding these ways to have these altered state experiences, deeper meditations, this like cross-pollinated, cross-cultural exchange that's taking place within our consciousness training practices is, I think, a very special thing to be able to be a part of it at this time in history. It's the first time in history that this is really happening that I know of. And that's where the experience really comes in. And it's not a big hurdle, right? It's not some massive buy-in to do it. It's like, go to one of your workshops or come to ours or go on one of the retreats. Like, okay, in the little bit, you invest a day or a couple days. And in the big bit, you go to an amazing trip, life-changing trip, no matter what. And you invest a week of your time. Like it's an incredible opportunity that I think is really just, coming into its forefront. 20 years ago when I started this, it wasn't even heard of. Right. And just over 20 years, which is like a flash for the universe, right? Just a flash. All of a sudden, it can be everywhere in the world, shared with everybody. And it gives us a collective capacity that we didn't have before. This capacity to be able to just sit within our own soul with each other and say like, yeah, I want to create a better life for myself. I want to create a better life for others. I want to create a better life for my friends and community. I want to be able to orient that way. Yeah. Right. Other people don't have to do worse for me to do better. Other people don't have to get poorer for me to be able to get richer. Mm-hmm. Like that's a big shift where all of a sudden it's like, wait, we can all be equally fueled by this and we can all grow together and we can all do better. And that starts to sound really good.
Yeah. 100%, man. Spoken like a true wizard. Hamilton, this has been so amazing, man. I am so excited for the next time we get to riff on this. I'm so excited to get to give you a hug in person when I make my way down to Peru. If you come to the States, definitely let me know. I will travel specifically just to come see you and hang out. But man, this has been so amazing. Where can people find more info about Blue Morpho, the Academy, the Mystery School, the retreats? Again, we'll put it all in the show notes. But where can people go to find out more info about all the amazing things you're offering, man?
Yeah, come to bluemorphotours.com. Go to bluemorphoacademy.com, go to hamiltonsouther.com, and you can find me on social media. And come. We have Mystery School. It's going on every week. We have the retreats. They're going on once a month. And the community is growing, and it's something really fire to be a part of right now.
Yeah, it's so awesome. Like, guys, the invitation has been made, right? Like, you have the resources now to go out. And if you're looking to experience this, hop into Blue Morpho. They're doing so many different things, whether you're ready to go down to Peru and do a full-on retreat, or maybe you're at a level where you're just like, hey, I just want to hop on a virtual call. Like, start putting yourself in the scenarios that you see yourself having more joy in. It's that simple, right? Doesn't mean it's easy necessarily, because you got to overcome some beliefs of who am I to do this or whatever, but it can be simple. The great thing about technology is now all you really have to do is hop on a Zoom call to start this process, right? To be able to start getting yourself around different people that are going to charge your battery and lead to a much more high quality fulfillment in life, a much more high quality life overall. So Hamilton, you are the man, dude. I normally ask my last question, but you've already answered it before. So I'm going to modulate it off the cuff, and we'll see how this comes out, right? So let's say that someone listening right now felt this feeling in them, right, while they were listening, right, of like, yeah, I'm feeling this weight and I'm really excited to be a part of this change, right? What is the one piece of advice you would give them with regards to where to start this, right? We talked about obviously hopping on Zoom calls, things like that. Are there any other things that are popping through to you of a good place to start, right? For someone that's listening that feels this charge in them, but they're maybe just starting this aspect of, starting to have this shift where they're not, fighting the powers that be. They're just being themselves and giving their own medicine to the world in the view of love. Like, how would you say, what advice would you give someone who's just about to start that journey?
Yeah, I think it starts in a reframing. It's all about a framework. So the framework I want to start with is just some basic facts. Number one, there's no other you. Like, look at it in the universe, not just like people, compared to the whole universe. There's no other you. Miracle. Like, that is a miracle. There's no other you. No one else has your heart. No one else has your brain. No one else has your soul. No one owns you. You're sovereign. You are a sovereign miracle of this universe. Let's start there. Let's start in that framework. Then see that in this core of you, you have this heart, and the heart is really important to how you really feel. Like the real depth inside of you, like the deepest you can go, your heart will always be there. When the mind fails, the heart will always be there. And so start right there. Start right there, and then just be honest with yourself. Just get super honest. Right? It can be scary, but it's worth it just to like drop everything and from the heart, just get super honest with yourself. And when you see yourself in that divine miracle that is of this universe, that has no duplicate, where you're truly unique, that's who you bring forth in this world. And everyone else is telling you everything else. That's just propaganda. It's nonsense, because you are that uniqueness, and that's what's special about you. Everyone else can learn everything else the same or pretty much the same, but that uniqueness only you have and only you are. So be that and love that from your heart. And that's a great place to start.
Dude, that just fired me up so much. I feel like I could go through a brick wall right now, just, Doyle rules right through the wall. Hamilton, thank you so much for coming on. And for everyone that listened to the show, viewed it through video, thank you guys so much for your continued support. If you loved the show, definitely, we would love a 5-star review. Helps us get the podcast out to more and more people. And seriously, guys, take Hamilton's initiative here. Hop into Blue Morpho Academy. All the things they got going on. There's a reason I have Hamilton on over and over again, because out of everyone I've talked to in the medicine space, Hamilton has more experience, and also just, he really embodies this notion of who I would want to sit with while I am undoing a lot of things that are inside of us, right? And so if you're feeling a call to work deeper with medicine, you're looking for training from a professional, etc., definitely check out Blue Morpho. I promise you, you'll have an amazing experience. So wherever you are in the world, I hope you are having the best day ever, and may the force be with you to infinity and beyond. Peace, fam.